evening.
Hello,
I know
hello,
you might have to
hello.
respond with chicken and rice or beans in your mouth. So if you can't hear me, just say, okay, so we're all together, we're here. So the food's gonna carry on until about 7:30. So feel free, don't be shy. We're here to feed you. We know it's dinner time. And if there's any left, feel free to just grab a plate and take it home to go to the next room. So welcome to tonight's session. My name is Grace. I am one of many that we're growing of TWP, and we are here tonight talking about how we thrive around autism and neurodivergence. We have been running, for those of you who are new, which I can see lots of new faces, which is great. We have been running since 2020, so this is our 5th year. Our main purpose, we'll share more about that. But I'll let Naomi introduce herself first. But just to let you know, my background is in community development, so working with grassroots for communities to raise their own ideas and innovations about changes and desired results and solutions for themselves. I also have an educational background in psychology and psychosocial interventions, particularly within the humanitarian sector. So for me, I love people, I love our community, and I want to see us do the best that we can. So I'll hand over to Naomi to introduce herself.
Thank you. So welcome. Please continue enjoying. It's really nice to actually be in a room, just people chatting. Actually, you're already talking to each other and connecting, which is a real aim of our sessions. We want to give you information, but also help you to connect. So that makes me happy. But I am Naomi, one of the other many parties of TWP. I also have a background in helping people. So I am a social worker, trained counselor. And I think the heart of TWP is knowing that actually as individuals, we may work as nurses, as HCAs, as social workers, and we help one-to-one, but we want to actually help our communities as a group. We want to bring the knowledge we might have and apply it to our 9 to 5 hour shift work, but we maybe never bring outside of that scope to maybe take it into our churches, to take it to our community spaces, to take it to our family members. So that's why, that's really the dream behind TWP. So tonight, actually doing this piece of work, we had a request from one of the ladies who leads the Sikh Society, saying, we're having young people who have autism. We want to know what this is. How do we help? How do we interact? Because those young people, they weren't coming to me as a social worker in my comms role, but they were going to this lady in her Sikh community, kind of leading in her Gurdwara. So this is the session we're having today to help to share that information. And we've got Jenny and Simon, who are the experts. So we stand here just to be the vehicles of sometimes sharing information that we may know, but also bringing on board experts to have a space with our community that they can talk. We can talk on the same level and then decide for ourselves what we are going to do, what feels relevant to us, what may not feel relevant to us. But also these guys, we also bring them to listen, to actually hear what's working from a community point of view. So this is a real conversation. Okay.
So we also have Jo at the back, and she's also part of our team, very much within the mental health profession. And we also have Tina, who's not able to join us. So again, our team is always growing. So we're always looking for volunteers. So if you're feeling you want to join in one way or another, we are always looking for support. So telling you a bit more about, is it going to change?
We have been sitting and connecting, so that's done already.
Yeah, there we go, cool. So we are the Wisdom Principle, that is the full version of TWP. We work at the intersection of faith, culture, and well-being. We recognize that each of us, particularly from the global majority, either have an affiliation with faith or spirituality, but most definitely we have a culture. However strong or influence it is, we have it. And so when we look at ourselves, we look at ourselves as a whole being, and recognizing that those things play an important part. So no matter whether you go to your GP or your midwifery, there are things in the back of your mind that you think about. My faith agrees with this or doesn't agree with this, or my culture agrees with this or doesn't agree with this. And we've been speaking with the service providers, the National Health Service and our local service providers, to try and explain the importance of this big elephant in the room that is clearly influencing how we uptake or don't uptake services, but also wanting to have an equal footing to share that confidently and for it to be reasoned with as an important part of who you are. So that it is not dismissed as something over there, but it is taken as part of your health and part of your well-being. So part of what we'll do today as well is, as soon as Jenny and Simon share a bit about them, we'll be asking those questions and say, whatever we've heard today, there are things that are running in my mind around my faith or spirituality, and there are things that are running in my mind around culture. And I'm wondering, how do I put these three things that I've heard tonight together or not? But at least to ask the question and to say, that is the main part of that. We are sitting within the Mental Health Alliance, which again is an alliance of service providers, which is where Simon sits as well. And this is basically a space where we connect the services to think about how can we better work with each other, how can we better work with communities within the Milton Keynes, and how do we put projects together or co-produce like we've done tonight with Talkback, to make sure that it's getting to the right people at the right time. We've also just been so excited to be part of the Denny Review, and that was actually launched officially on Friday. We were there, and we've got Grace Adinka from the VCSE. And that was great for us to see what we were part of sharing. And I say we, meaning all of you, because all of this information doesn't belong to TWP, it belongs to us. And so anything that you are saying to us, we are able to put into such important spaces like the Denny Review. Because in all sense, when will you ever know how to input the Denny Review? But because we have this strategic space, we can share back with you some of the impact of what you are sharing is doing, so that we don't feel like we're not participants in these big decisions that are being made around our health and our well-being. So maybe you can share a bit more about it.
Yeah. We do that piece of work with the Mental Health Alliance. And just so you know, following COVID, Black Lives Matter, I think we're all aware that maybe our health, the health of Black people, brown people, Asian people, the health of people of color, maybe does worse than compared to our white counterparts. So there's a big conversation within the council, within the NHS around how we address health inequality. So we input into that. We anything that we learn that's helpful, especially around saying you have to recognize faith and culture. And so it's really important for us when our voice actually is heard and it's recognized, and we will continue to use this space to share those initiatives. So Grace is here from the VCSE, and you can connect with her to learn more. But we also have people here from your local mental health services to connect with them and to hear what's going on. We will be asking, and we would love for all of you who are here to join us, because we have a really exciting opportunity to work with your local mental health team to have a space together, a shared conversation together. So we are trying to host a roundtable conversation with our mental health team to say, as a community, this is how we navigate our mental health. And for them to say, actually, we have been aware of the health inequalities within our mental health services, and these are the steps we have taken that have been successful. These are the steps we're still taking, and this is the goal that we are hoping to end to. So we can actually say, is this working for both sides? What we've learned as a community and what they're doing, is that working? So we would love to know if those of you who are here who would be interested in joining us for that conversation, so you could bring your own voice, your community's voice, your family's voice, your friend's voice, to say to the mental health services, this is what's important to us. So please let us know we're here today about that conversation.
So that will be happening on the 24th of June. So if you do want to join that, please see Joe or Grace Adinka to help you register. It will be an online conversation on a Tuesday evening. That is our designated time where we ask services to come. And that's very specific because we know that we all have jobs, we all have family responsibilities, and so we actually challenge the services to say, come out of hours. It's all well and good to do 9 to 5, but if I can't see you between 9 to 5, what happens to my health, and what my questions are. So that's specifically been done on that to incorporate that. So if you do want to be part of that conversation, it's for anybody who is in the community or a leader of any sort, which is kind of why you're here. So this is part of the second one of the year. So this is part of the Leaders Forum. The Leaders Forum was set up after lots of conversations with most of you last year. And we recognize actually we want a strategic space for us to feed back into. And we wanted to do two things. One is push back on health inequalities, which means that we choose a topic that was chosen by yourselves, and we bring services to tell us more about it, but for us also to evaluate where are there gaps. But also we talked about equipping. There was many conversations around, but we don't feel equipped to maybe have some of these conversations, or some of the things in our communities, for example, safeguarding. So in February, we did safeguarding because communities wanted to know, I often don't say anything because I don't even know whether I've got the right policies. And so there are lots of things that are kind of going under the water, whereas actually they should be raised up and flagged up for support. So the next few, we have 4 quarterly meetings in a year. We've had our equipping session in February. Today is our pushback session. So please think of all the difficult questions for Jenny and Simon. They may not be able to answer everything, but at least it helps us to kind of push that back to the relevant people. The next one will be on the 26th of September. Again, a topic that the leaders said they wanted to know more about is acute mental health. So we hear of things like psychosis or schizophrenia, but we don't know what those terms mean or what they do or make you feel. And so as leaders, you are often the first point of contact when somebody's struggling. So whether they're coming to you as an imam or as a pastor and saying, I am feeling all of these things and I don't know what they are, it's important for you to actually have a starting point and to have a resource where you can say, this is my response plan if somebody comes with any of these challenges. Then the last session is the 28th of November. This we would love to be able to discuss a bit more. So if you're not on the Leaders Forum on WhatsApp and you would like to be, please let us know because we'll be discussing what we want to do with it. Our current thoughts at the moment is that we would love to be able to celebrate with you. So we don't necessarily want a topic, but we want to celebrate with you because many of you leaders do incredible things, but often nobody comes to pat you on the back and say, well done. Well done for giving all of your hours organizing. I don't know how many barbecues, how many women sessions, how many children activities. So we just want to say, well done. So that's our session. So I'm going to move on.
So we share the stress bucket, and I think some of you who we've been to your communities might have a stress bucket, might have some pebbles, and this is a part of TWP's work, which is to help concepts like psychosis, acute mental health, be kind of common language to us. And I think we all understand the idea of a bucket, and the bucket being your mental capacity to cope. And the idea that actually there's lots of stresses, like there might be right now because cost of living, it's about to be half term, which can mean the routine goes out the window, but also sickness or financial worries. If your bucket's being made full of lots of things and you have less or blocked ways of letting off that stress, those pressures, actually the bucket's going to be full and overflow. As a way of thinking, actually our mental capacity is going to be overwhelmed, and we're human. It is human for us to be overwhelmed, and maybe when you're overwhelmed, you may fall into a bit more anxiety, a bit more depression, or your thinking might be a bit more clouded, or your relationships may break down. And this is a helpful model for you to use to talk with your children or with anyone around you. How are you? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling full? Can you think of actually, you are overwhelmed, I can see that. Can we try and think back? What was it that actually tipped the bucket over? Oh, how are your TAPs doing? And in terms of TAPs, so kind of when we're working clinically, we'll be helping children to think about how can you get your worry thoughts out. And some of your children may have like worry pillows, so they put the worries under the pillow and they sleep. But also it works for adults, actually. We can develop additional strategies to improve the way that we manage the stresses that are coming in, the emotions which are coming in. And one thing we've been wanting to do is have a well-being toolkit to help you to recognize actually, maybe it is good time management if you're going to have kind of kids at home and you need to be working and you need to be seeing to your other people that you look after. Maybe it is that. Or maybe it is you have good time management, but you don't have the resources. Like you want to take a really relaxing bath. And actually, if we can resource you with things like that, that actually will be helping you, we are looking after your mental health. Because we are very much that actually our mental well-being is things that we can do for ourselves so we can self-manage. There may be points where you need to see a psychologist like Jenny or Simon, but actually let's also look at that level where we are managing our own well-being using tools to be able to look after ourselves and our families. So towards the end, you'll have a chance to look through our wellbeing toolkit, pick 1 or 2 items that actually you think to yourself, I know I need to do this. I know I need to look after my skin. I know I need to do my hair, and doing that makes me feel good. So I'm going to take an item to make sure I do that. And that little thing kind of starts to build you up, or starts to water down. And we're continuing to develop tools like this and to share them with services to say this is language that actually may convey the message better than maybe some clinical language. So if you do invite us to your communities, we hope to have these conversations to try out and offer these tools. But we love to share this stress bucket.
Yeah, so we'll be out in as many festivals as we possibly can physically be at this year. So please do come and see us there. But also we're available to come to you, to your, whatever it's, whether 5 people, you have a women's group or women friends group, and you want to just talk about it in a safer space, we are welcome and happy to come to you. We often say moving the front door to where you are rather than asking to drag you all the way to come and see all of these things. So if there's any particular request that you feel, oh, my group has been talking about preconception, or my group has been talking about acute mental illness, and you're like, I don't know who to ask or who can talk to us, please give us a shout. We have a lot of connections within the NHS where we can request and say this particular group actually wants a qualified psychologist to just sit with them for an hour. Can you support that? So don't feel that you have to wait until September for one of these conversations to happen. We are also happy to do them online. We know that especially with kids and family and life, it can be a lot easier to have it then. And you can decide to have it just within your community, or you can decide to have it open. So again, please have those conversations with us. We are happy to come and support that. But
Perfect.
we're going to hand over to, it's going to work for me. We're going to hand over to Jenny, who is going to do the session tonight. And she's going to speak to us about, I'll let her explain.
Okay. So while Jenny is doing the magic over here, so today you've come to learn specifically about autism and neurodivergence. Dr. Wilson, Jenny,
Thank you.
is a psychologist who's going to do that, and then Dr. Simon.
Yes. So I'm going to talk about autism in the family. My name is Jenny Wilson. I've been a psychologist in the NHS for over 30 years, just retired. So I'm enjoying just being a nana now, taking care of the elder members of the family, but still very much involved in the world of supporting people with neurodiversities. You know, whether it's through doing locum sessions, doing talks, supporting parents to understand the condition, how to manage, because 9 times out of 10, it's not just about the label. It's what do I do? Okay, so now you've told me this is what's happening. What do I do? Because your standard parenting, suddenly it doesn't seem to be working. So we have to tweak the parenting style, just like we have to tweak the way we teach this population. So a big part of what I do, sometimes with Autism Bedfordshire and all the different agencies out there, they're wanting to make things different, wanting to make things better, wanting to go into communities where it's still a bit of a taboo, there's still a stigma attached, you know, and they're inviting me in, and I'm more than happy to come and talk and build the awareness. So that's what I'm here to do today. Nope, not moving. Okay, let's try this way. There we go. So what is autism? And what do all these different terminologies mean? And we hear these batted about. When I was in CAMS for the last 20 plus years, you know, I would hear all of these different labels being used. And it gets so confusing. Your child's got ASD, your child's got ASC, your child's got Asperger's syndrome, your child's Aspie, your child's got social communication difficulties. Now, more recently, neurodivergence. And it's like, well, what have they got? Which one is it? I'm hearing all these terminologies. And the reason why we have so many terminologies is because we understand it is a spectrum. Now, we know that depending on where your child may be on the spectrum, they're going to have different issues. But social communication is something that runs all the way through the spectrum. So an autism spectrum condition features a number of problems. You may remember 10 years ago, people were saying, oh, it's down to the aluminium in the pots that we're using. Oh, it's down to the NMR injection. It's down to this, it's down to that. And the jury is still out. The strongest links that we've seen so far in research is genetic. So if your child is autistic, as we go through the family line, we may somewhere see a dad, a granddad, a grandma, an uncle, or somebody that's got very similar features. Depending on how old they are, we don't know whether or not they would have been diagnosed or if it would have been picked up or recognised, or people might have just said, oh, something a bit different about that person. But we don't quite know what. If you're coming from a country where it's not easy to get access to assessments, then they could be put into that box of just being, it's okay to be different. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But these differences mainly impact on their social communication skills, which is why the behaviour gets noticed. So the way they understand what you're communicating and the way they feed that back might be where they make a couple of mistakes along the way. More recently, in the last 5 years, diagnostic criteria, the DSM-5, has added sensory issues because you cannot detach sensory issues from this. It very much triggers a lot of the behaviours and the anxieties that we see with autism. So communication, imagination and thinking, social understanding and relating, and sensory issues. So diagnosing in childhood. So a child's social communication difficulties can show itself in so many different ways. And when we're doing the assessments, you know, if anyone that's gone through the pathway will know that we take a very long time to assess and diagnose. Because what you don't want is to attach a label that's an inappropriate label, it's an incorrect label. So there's certain things that we're looking for. Now, you may see a number of professionals before you finally get that diagnosis. But what we know is we often see a delay or lack of speech in their early years. And for the higher functioning, it's the other way around. When they develop language, you can't shut them up. They could talk all day, but you might not be interested in what they're talking about, but that doesn't matter. If they like talking about it, you like hearing about it, and they will continue to talk about it. So there's some things that we see. There might be some difficult with their verbal communication. We see sometimes some difficulties in reading non-verbal communication. So, you know, you could be standing there with your most stern face on, and this child's just laughing at you because they're not reading your non-verbal communication. They're not reading that language. So they may not know when they've gone that a little bit too far and they're annoying that friend, or they've had enough. They're just not always able to read the non-verbal communication. So difficulties decoding the gestures, all the things that we take for granted. You know, I remember when I was growing up, you know, I just had to look at my grandma's face. She didn't have to open her mouth. And whatever I was doing, I knew I had to stop. She just gave me that. Sometimes it came with the head. And I was like, okay. Not always easy for someone with autism to pick up that that's what you're saying. I'm saying with my body language, stop what you're doing. It's not appropriate. So we do have to change the way we communicate. Literal interpretation of language, they may take things very literally. And we all use language in such a fluid way, not realising that actually this young person is literally taking on board what we're saying without being able to pick up that it might be banter, you know, we might be using metaphors, and we're playing about with the language. They're just taking it literally. And I see this all the time in sessions, you know, and no matter how many years I've worked in this field, I still make a mistake. At the end of a session, I think, do you have to put your shoes and socks on now? No, thank you, Jane. I wouldn't. Because what I should be saying is the session is over. Put your shoes and socks on, please. So if you ask a question, you will get a response. And the response will be, no, thank you. Now, the older somebody gets, that can be viewed as rude, surely he must have known that I was explaining him, put shoes on. But actually, if you've got a literal understanding of language, maybe not so. Failure to respond to the speech of others. And this is something that we pick up quite early. We do a test called the ADOS test. I don't know if anybody's been through the system. We do the ADOS. And one of the first things that we do at the beginning of an ADOS, I'll enter the waiting room and I'll just call the child's name. Everyone else will turn around and look at me, apart from that child. Just do not respond to their name being called. They've disconnected what you're doing and what you're saying to themselves. So, you've got the parents saying, come on, that's you. She's talking to you. They're not looking at me. They're not looking in my direction. And they just carry on what they're doing. So that failure to respond to the speech of others. Or you go to the supermarket and you bump into a friend. And it's like, hello, say hello to auntie, say hello. No. Not willing to just respond and instigate that social interaction in the way that other children may do. Echolalia is something that we see a lot of as well. So it's echoing what they've heard, which sometimes can send us down the wrong track. So it's like, oh, they've got perfect speech and language. They've repeated every single word of their favourite book, word for word, and they're only 3. Do they have the understanding of the story? Do they understand the characters? Do they understand the feelings and emotions that are going on in the story? Or are they actually echoing? So would you like to put your shoes on? Put your shoes on. But they're not putting their shoes on. Would you like to eat your dinner? Eat my dinner. But they're not eating their dinner. So they're literally just echoing what you say. And echoing it with such perfection that you do believe that they have a good understanding. So imagine when they just don't do it. So, but he repeated it, so he must know what I want him to do. Echolalia. And we see this quite a lot. Frustrates the hell out of a lot of class teachers, I must say. They've also got the different style of social interaction. So they may have difficulty, like I say, making those social approaches. So they may be the one that just goes and barges into somebody else's game and wants to play, but actually they've got no idea what the game is. So it's their rules, their way or the highway. So making social approaches could be another area that we see quite a lot of. Responding different to social situations. Now, as adults, I think we all learn as we get older that different situations need different behaviours. So yeah, we can say that kind of edgy, rude joke to our mates in the playground, but you don't say it at Christmas dinner when Nan and Grandad are sitting around the table. But actually, it's making that shift. If it's okay in that setting, why is it not okay in another setting? So some of the things that we all take for granted. As a young person may not be able to recognise that a different setting dictates a different behaviour. And so we see some inappropriate behaviours or inappropriate language because that's the way they decided to communicate. Not recognising that they have to tweak that according to the audience that are listening. Making friends due to that egocentricity. So even when they do want to make friends and be sociable, they'll go into a friendship and it's almost like I own that friend and they're not allowed to be friends with anybody else. Does that sound familiar? Yes. We see this all the time and it's very difficult for the other child because they always feel like, gosh, I feel like they've got me in their clutches and they won't let me go and they don't want me to be friends with anybody else. And it's such a hard one because as they move from primary school into senior school, friendships do change and shift quite a bit. And one of my patients in my private practice said to me the other day, he's 14, and he says, I just don't like break time because they just hang out and talk about random stuff in the playground and it doesn't make sense, it's not interesting. Whereas when we were in primary school, we all went off and we played and I knew what the games were, I knew how to play rounders, I knew how to play cricket, football, I knew the rules. Now they just stand around in little groups. And then on a Saturday, they all want to go to the Arndale and hang out there and do just nothing. doesn't make sense. So making friends and keeping friendships becomes more difficult as the other children raise the bar. And their expectations are much higher. Now, understanding their emotions is hard enough, but understanding the emotions of others is equally as difficult. So sometimes we see that all or nothing behaviour. So parents often come and say to me, "God, they're like Jekyll and Hyde. You know, they got up this morning, they were all cheerful and fine. We got to the school gates and whew, all the emotions came out." And people often say to me as well that I could tell what kind of a day they had by the look on their face as they leave the school building in the evening. And I pretty much know what our evening's going to be like by just that look on their face. Now, they may not understand why their emotion has changed or be able to put it into words because, like I said, they have a social communication problem. So they're struggling, but being able to communicate why and how, that's part of the problem. And we know that what happens when we bottle up our feelings over a long period of time and our bucket becomes full, it's never a positive ending. When our buckets are overloaded and we've held it in for so long, it will come out with a bang. So we see quite a lot of that. You know, I'm seeing a young man at the moment who's bottled up emotions to do with year 8, 9, 10, and he's now in year 11. Hasn't told a soul until his mum found him contemplating suicide because he wasn't able to express that. Didn't know how, didn't know where, and didn't feel that anybody got it. And was absolutely overjoyed when he finally saw a therapist that got it. He said, "Oh, you get it. I get that there's going to be differences. And the way we all communicate our emotions, we have to expect it to be different with this population." Picking up on social signals. So again, just picking up other people's body language, that they've had enough. And this is one that shows up quite a lot in the high school era. You know, there was a young man that I was working with that was absolutely used to love watching Big Brother. And he was convinced that when a girl does this and puts her hair behind her ears, she wants to be your girlfriend. She fancies you. So the literal thinking again. Got a few punches on the nose because that's not what they were trying to show him. But just not picking up on the social signals, taking things literally. Oh, if she stands next to me and she does that, I'm in. No. So just interpreting the intentions of others. Now, being able to pick up when they're being set up is quite an important one when we're living in a culture where there are gangs and there are situations where children are coerced into doing things that they just don't want to do. Being able to pick up that somebody is setting them up or is trying really hard to get them to do something that's dodgy, illegal, you know, this is why we need to pretty much keep our awareness. That, yeah, they may be able to go and play out, but who are they playing out with? Who are they mixing on? And what's going on in that friendship? Is it really a friendship? Because you can see where the vulnerabilities might be. But we can see that socially, often with the very little ones, they'll play, but they'll play on their terms. They have a different style of using their imagination flexibly, and they may have difficulty kind of thinking, I guess, about flexible behaviour, like I said, when to adapt it, when not to adapt it. Being unable to create imaginative activities. And this is one that people often come and say, "Oh, uses his imagination all the time. He can imitate Thomas the Tank Engine at the back of his hand." Echolalia. Not actually using their imagination. It's memorise that book to perfection, but not actually understanding how imagination works. Very black and white in their thinking. Responding to objects in an unusual and repetitive way. We often see that when we're doing the ADOS test, and we'll put toys in front of them and we'll try and encourage them to create an imaginative play scene. And this is where they pause and doesn't make sense. So I had one ADOS last week where, I had a pen and a pencil. The pencil's a little girl and the pen's a little boy, and he's chasing the little girl around the playground, and she's running ever so fast. Jenny, it's a pencil and a pen, was his response to me. Just wasn't having it. Just wasn't having it. Whereas sometimes, we would get a child an amazing Christmas present and they just want to play with the box. Or they want to turn it upside down, just spin the wheels. Or they might just want to put it in order, build, or order it according to size or colour, but not use it in the way that it was designed. Something that we see from a very early age. And showing an intense level of interest in one area. Now, that topic of interest, it can look like OCD. Literally the same conversation, the same game, the same routine, over and over again. And again, if they like it, you like hearing about it. I've heard a lot about trains. I've heard a lot about quite a lot of things. I think I know everything about RuneScape and all the video games, because when it's their topic of interest, it becomes very predictable. They know that topic like the back of their hand. They know the beginning, the middle, and the end. Doesn't require any flexible thinking at all, because they've memorised it. They know everything to do with it. Whether it's maps, whether it's space, whatever their interest is, they know it. Gets the anxiety down. Because one thing anxiety feeds on is unpredictability. And reluctant to understand other people's point of view. So we see that, their way or the highway, quite a common one. So what do you notice about their social behaviours? So when they're leading a conversation, is it based on their topic of interest? Do they ask about your thoughts? It's another thing that we do when we're doing the testing. So we'll have a cliffhanger question and we'll wait to see, if they ask about our thoughts or our interests, and we get nothing. And I always go for the really big cliffhangers. And I was really excited that it was swimming day at school, and so I decided to jump in the pool, forgot that I couldn't swim, and then nothing. Most children will be like, what happened next? Did you drown? What happened? Did somebody save you? No response to the cliffhanger conversation. One boy last week said to me, you have to follow the rules of the swimming pool. Okay. So just not showing that interest. What's your thought? So to be able to cope better in one-to-one situations and groups. And most children on the spectrum do prefer smaller groups or one-to-one rather than being in a very large group. In a very large group, there's a lot of unpredictability. We don't know what everyone in that group's likely to do, what they're likely to say, what do they like, what will they talk about. And the more people we add to the group, the more anxiety builds. They seek predictability in a kind of anxiously awkward way, because that keeps the anxiety down. They may struggle, like I say, to share friendships. So you're my friend, you can't be anybody else's friend. And this is something that we see a lot, that very reduced eye contact. But don't get it twisted, they can give eye contact. So, we can't rely on that totally, But what they're doing is they're giving you eye contact, but they're not using it to read your social communication. They're just looking in your direction, almost as if they're looking through you, looking in your direction, but not using it in a social way. Emotions, we see the Jekyll and Hyde, too much, too little, and that motor clumsiness. And sometimes, we would have these long discussions with our paediatricians. Is it motor clumsiness? Is it dyspraxia? Is it, what's going on here? Is it autism? And to me, the motor clumsiness is how they relate to the world around them. So if they bump into that table, that's the table's fault. Never dawned on them, actually, I'm around that table. What's that table doing there? It's the table's fault. So that motor clumsiness is something that we see a lot of. Almost tripping over their own feet. Now we see a lot of strength with this population. We see that ability to focus on detail. when they really like something, to be able to focus on it and keep that focus. And when we look at all the celebrities that are on the spectrum, we see that they have done very, very well in life. Because if they write a business plan, they're going to follow it to a T. If they decide that that's the thing that they're going to achieve, whereas the others might go off and have a lunchtime jolly, hang out with their mates, they may have the same pattern, turn up at the same time, do the job, and not leave until the job is finished. So goes in their favour in the workplace. We know that they're visual thinkers. So just having that wordy, lengthy conversation on the first day of the job of everything you need to know about the job may not sink in, but show me and tell me what you want me to do, and it's more likely to sink in. So when we're communicating, we have to pause and think, are we using too much language and too many words? Remember, they're visual thinkers. Sometimes we go right back to basics. Let's draw what happened. And I often use social stories where I'll do diagrams of stage by stage what took place. And with the social story, because it's visual, they can interrupt and say, no, he was standing there, I was standing there, and this happened and that happened, because it's visual. We see this and hear this a lot in the media, technical and mathematical geniuses. We can't say it's for absolutely everybody, because one size doesn't fit all, but it's not unusual. Because there's one thing about technical and mathematical skills, they're very predictable. It's either right or it's wrong. It either works or it doesn't, which is why that tends to be one of their areas of interest. Now, parents often say to me that there's so many people in my family that say this is made up by the professionals. There's no such thing as autism, no such thing as ADHD, or it's mum's fault, you didn't parent them appropriately. Blame, 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 and finger pointing. And all sorts of myths are coming into play. But actually, there are real psychological explanations for what's going on here. We know that they have a different style of theory of mind. We know that imagination, perspective taking, ability to empathise is part of the condition. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with your parenting. There's nothing you could have done differently. If your child is autistic, they were autistic in the womb. So you're not bad parents. We see that egotistical, rigid thinking. So if I like saying it, you like hearing it, all part of the condition. It's not just this stubborn child that's a bit selfish. It's part of the condition. Inability to take the perspective of others. Well, you should know that your sibling's only 3 years old and they're going to cry. Really? They can't take their perspective. That didn't make me cry, so why is it making them cry? Central coherence, they're very detailed thinkers, but sometimes just don't see the whole picture. Now, when you're high functioning and your IQ's through the roof, that's very hard for others to understand. Why don't they get it? It's very hard for siblings to understand as well. It's like, if I did that, I'd be in serious trouble. Why are we making special allowances for this person? Because sometimes they can't see the whole picture. We do have to break it down for them. They have poor executive functioning, so organising and planning may not be their forte. So yes, they may come out of school minus the blazer, minus the trainers, minus the coat. Sounds very familiar. But actually their IQ's through the roof. Psychological explanations, these are all part of the spectrum. And this includes their self-monitoring and flexibility of behaviour. So just not being able to regulate their own behaviour. And that's when they look to us to help them to regulate. Sensory issues, like I say, never used to be a part of the diagnostic criteria, but it now is. So they may have hypersensitivities to certain sounds, smells, textures. They may not like their gravy touching their potato, or they may like their spaghetti to be separate to the meat. lots of different hypersensitivities. But we also see hyposensitivities. So being able to tolerate their own noise. So they can have their music full blast, but they can't cope with somebody else's. But they may also have that very high pain threshold. I remember a child coming to my session limping. And I said, "Oh, you're limping. Have you got a bad foot?" He goes, "Yeah, a white van knocked me over this morning." So, whoa. You've actually got a broken foot. We need to take you to A&E. High pain thresholds. We see that a lot. Sensory integration of problems. So, focusing in a classroom when somebody behind might be flicking their pen, or the lights might be making that strange noise that fluorescent lights make, or the humming of the projector sounds really loud to them. There's nobody else can hear it in the room. And suddenly this child's getting more and more anxious, In a high state of anxiety, we either fight our way out of it, we flight, we leg it out the door, or we freeze. I can't speak, I can't answer a question, I can't get my name, I can't communicate. We become completely non-verbal. I'm functioning on the spectrum, IQ through the roof, but we become completely non-verbal. We could be flapping, spinning on the spot. So we take that spectrum very loosely. In a high state of anxiety, any of these things can trigger a behaviour that to the naked eye just looks like, whoa, you just lost the plot for no reason just now. I don't know what's going on. Could be overstimulation. It could be on a sensory overload. And we do see that a lot with children, just too much coming at them. We take them along to this birthday party and all the other kids are having fun, and you go to collect your child and they're standing there like this with their hands over their ears and they just can't cope. Too much coming in. Sounds, smells, my socks don't feel comfortable in my shoes, I can't concentrate, I need to get out of here. Anxiety is an extremely common symptom throughout the spectrum. Now, often a child may come along to CAMS and, the GP saying they've got anxiety, and we scratch under the surface and we may see autism. We may see ADHD. If you think about anxiety, the presentation is inattention, poor concentration, impulsivity, some hyperactivity. Exactly the same as ADHD. So anxiety does play a role, yes, but it's not always the primary condition. And behaviours that may appear to be rude, unusual, or socially inappropriate might be their only way of expressing that they're feeling anxious. What social communication problem? So I might not be able to tell you I'm feeling anxious, but I can show you with my behaviour. Unfortunately, it's the behaviour that gets them noticed. It's the behaviour that gets them excluded, thrown out of that school, go to another school, thrown out of that school. But actually, we need to always look at what's going on underneath these behaviours. It could be their only way of expressing that the environment is just too much. Your communication style is just too much. Your expectations of me to adjust and change my routine, it's just too much. Sending my anxiety through the roof. And in a high state of anxiety, I may not behave in the way that I usually behave. Might be inappropriate, might be fighting my way out of the situation. Don't care if it's granny in front of me, I might have to punch her because I've got to get out of the situation. Or I might just freeze and hold on to that car door. I am not going into school today. We move up and down the spectrum. And we will use all the usual reactions to anxiety when this happens. The types of anxiety associated with this client group, which is very common, often we see this in camps all the time: separation anxiety, social phobia, generalized anxiety disorders. We see things like tocophobia, so, finding it really, really hard to associate with what's going on in their body. We see trichotillomania, so pulling their hair, sometimes pulling and eating, sometimes chewing their sweatshirts, chewing their pencils, things that aren't edible. We see children just, eating lumps of wood in a high state of anxiety when we don't pick up that it's the autism and we don't adapt the way we do things. We can see full-blown mental health conditions developing, as well as depression. We can see, if untreated over a longer period of time until they reach their adult years, the development of phobias, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, chronic depression. And it's not uncommon for undiagnosed adults to remain in mental health services for years and years until somebody stops and says, oh, hold on a minute. So this has been happening since you were 2? Oh, maybe it's not just anxiety, maybe it's just depression. Maybe it's something else. The more awareness that we build in our communities, in our schools, everywhere, the less people are going to show up in adult mental health services with a lifetime worth of misdiagnosis. A thorough assessment is always crucial, and it can be frustrating. I see it every day. Parents are fed up with telling their story. They've told it to everybody under the sun. But it's really important to gather really thorough history. So information from birth. Literally, I will sit in front of parents and I want to know about your pregnancy. And if your child's 25, I want to know everything in between. Information regarding how they build and maintain relationships. I would like to observe them in various settings, school setting, home setting, other settings, to see what's going on. Sometimes you observe them from the classroom window. They're with a group of children, think, oh, yeah, teacher signs are off. They're very sociable. What's the quality of that interaction with the other children? Are they instigating the play? Are they inquiring about other people's emotions and feelings? Are they meeting any of those differences on the scale? So we do have to take a close look. Information about their sensory integration, if they've got any hyposensitivities. And then we also have to outrule that there is a mental health problem or another neurodevelopmental problem. Is it ADHD? Is there a learning difficulty? So by the time you get to that point, you've normally seen an education psychologist, a clinical psychologist, a paediatrician, maybe a psychiatrist, a speech and language therapist, the school SENCO, everybody and his wife. The good thing about now compared to when I first came into the field 20 years ago, we've all got the same systems. So you shouldn't have to keep repeating yourself. Hopefully your speech and language therapist will put their information on the system. I can see it, the Ed Site can see it, everybody that's employed by the NHS can see that. They have the multidisciplinary professionals meetings, we all share information so that we know exactly what's going on. But it is never a quickie. So where do you refer? So if you feel, okay, sounds like my child might be ticking a lot of those boxes, everything that Jenny said, it's kind of sounding familiar. What do I do now? First port of call, to be assessed by the community paediatric team, because they're the ones that do the ASD assessments in Milton Keynes, is your GP, the school SENCO, through speech and language therapists, which can be again accessed through the school. Your health visitor can do the referral, but it will always be a multi-agency assessment. Therefore, lots of professionals could be involved in this journey. And in Milton Keynes, we've also got lots of private agencies that do assessments of autism and just neurodiverse conditions. But these are probably the places that we access easily for our children, and it's always the first port of call. And sometimes it might be just a conversation with their class teacher to see, have they noticed anything? Have they picked up on anything? Because sometimes it's not until you say it that people think, oh, actually, yeah, he does struggle with friendships, or she does have kind of these strange mannerisms. And whenever we notice that something changes, yeah, we do see the anxiety. It's only when you bring it to their attention. So I always say that You as parents are the expert on your child, not the psychologist, not the teacher, not the, you are the experts on your child. You know that child well. You know when they're crying at 2 weeks old, is that a hungry cry, I'm a wet cry, or actually I've got wind, or I need to go to sleep. Picking up these things tells us that you are the expert on your child. Yep, it's on to move. I can. Children with autism can achieve. I always love that feedback session where I meet with the young person individually and we talk about what it's like to be on the spectrum. And we talk about famous people who have autism. And I always pause and say, okay, so if you've got a diagnosis of ADHD, it's all well in line. Stop and say, have you heard of a person called Richard Branson? Do you reckon he did well in life? Got a few pop in the bag? Poor? Rich? What do you reckon? He has ADHD. You ever heard of will.i.am? What do you reckon? Doing well for himself? Flat broke? Homeless? Oh. He has autism. Will Smith? Got a few bob in the bag? Done well in his career? Acting, singing, you name it. Writing scripts? Grammy Awards? ADHD. It doesn't have to be a downward spiral. It doesn't have to be a negative. Being different is okay. It's just different. It's not wrong, it's not damaged, it's not broken, it's just different. So my final word for autism in the family is, autism is not due to poor parenting or you just having a bad child. It's a neurodevelopmental condition that requires a very specific style of parenting and teaching and mindful environmental manipulation. So please go ahead and share with as many people in your community what autism really is and break down those stigmas. I'm all for prayer and I will never deny a child prayer, but all the prayer in the world will not take away the autism. My prayer would be for the families to understand how to manage the autism. My prayer would be for that child to be feeling okay. Different is okay. You can be as diverse as you want, and that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you for taking us from birth literally to adulthood. And just before handing over to Simon, I know I learned a lot, even having worked with people across the spectrum. I've learned a lot about the assessment process, about how to make adaptations. And maybe I just want to take a minute for all of us, because we've heard quite a lot, just to maybe pause and maybe think about one thing that Jenny shared today that's really sticking with you. And maybe just share with the person next to you. Just say, turn to the person next to you and say, introduce yourself, maybe just share your name. And just share with them one thing that you're holding on to from what Jenny has said. She's shared beautiful stories, examples. And maybe you have an example of yourself that you can share. I'll give us just one more minute.
I'm going to have to ask you to bring the conversation to a bit of a close. And hopefully you can continue this conversation afterwards. I'm going to do something that helps me know that you're in the room. So you clap with me twice. Okay, so you're back in the room. Welcome back. Yes, you got a question?
I really don't want to upset the program, but that was a really good presentation, and thank you to the presenter. Can you take a question now?
We're gonna take some questions afterwards, so we're gonna give Simon a chance to share his presentation, and then we'll have about 20 or 30 minutes for questions. So write the questions down so that you don't forget them. And then we'll do our best to answer. Anything that we don't manage to answer within the session, please make sure you have those to us at the end of the session. And then we'll try and find a way of sending those out. Can I just double check that everybody has registered tonight so that we're able to at least, when we ask Simon or Jenny to respond to those, and then go out to everybody who maybe had a similar question and didn't quite get to ask.
I have to go in
Oh, okay.
10 minutes, so I'll leave my question for now.
Brilliant. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I think we're just going to move on straight away so that we can gather as much time. So I'm going to you.
Thank you very much. Not sure how I'm going to follow Dr. Jenny, so thank you very much. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert actually. It's the talkback members, talkback autistic members are the experts. And this presentation, a lot of it's from our autism awareness training, Autism Insights, which is written in partnership with them. So I am not an expert. Now, I've got one of our members, he's actually in the room with us tonight, by pure coincidence. So for any questions, I'll be asking the chap in the room. He's called Angela, by the way, wonderful artist. But he's the expert, because he's autistic. I'm not autistic. I am I'm an engagement manager for learning disability and autism charity called Talkback. Our sort of slogan is developing a world of possibilities. Now we are 25 years old this year. We work in Buckinghamshire, Wickham, Elmstree and Milton Keynes. And we work alongside autistic people and those with a learning disability. We provide people with opportunities for education, life and social skills, and also employment. We enable them to share a voice. The talk roots are in advocacy. So we enable them to share a voice, and Angela may well share his at the end of this, to be recognised equally in their community. It's very important for me to also listen and learn from you as time goes on. So I do hope that this is just the first sort of initial conversation that we have with you. And I've extended an invitation to you right now. You're more than welcome to come to our base and centre of Milton Keynes across the Cornerstone to carry on conversations from tonight, should there be a wish or need. And it'd be my pleasure to organise some sort of engagement sessions with our autistic members. Talkback have 3 values, which I hope sets the scene nicely, which is never to assume, to always listen, and to forever explore. I'm going to be saying, as Jenny said, quite a lot, and that's for a very good reason. So many things out there, what is it, what isn't it, that type of thing. So Talkback, we took responsibility and we came up with our own. So I wonder what you think of this. And with everything I say, I wonder if I can just ask you whether this is also familiar to people that you've come across in your everyday life. But and again, we're not doctors or clinicians, but our definition of what autism is autism is the difference which affects how people process information, perceive and make sense of the world. Autism also impacts how people communicate, relate to and interact with others. Autism affects each person in different ways. It's, for my 11 years of working alongside autistic people, I can tell you, if you've met one person with autism, you have met one. You can have that and steal that. Now, what autism is not, as Jenny said, it is not temporary. It is not contagious. It is not caused by vaccinations. It is not caused by parenting styles. Please do believe me. Autism does not go away in childhood. There are over approaching 100 TWP members across various projects. We are an adult service. Autism is not a learning disability. Autism is not a learning difficulty. There's very similarities, but they are separate. I'm not a big fan of statistics, but for this evening, there are 700,000 autistic people in the UK. Just 3 or 4 years ago, we will know, and I'm sure you'll agree, there are many more going through the long diagnosis wait. But if we include their families in that, sorry, it's more than 1 in 100 people. But if we include their families, autism is part of daily life for 2.8 million people in the UK. Now, what's not okay is only 30% of autistic adults in the UK are in any form of paid employment. And you may have heard that autism is 3 times more prevalent in boys than girls. Well, why is that? Well, this is because signs of autism in girls can present differently. So it can present in girls differently, and as a result can lead to a misdiagnosis, which then leads to more boys getting a diagnosis. I like this one. Jenny touched upon it, but there's so many labels out there, isn't there? But I actually like this. Let's see the able, not the label. Okay, is that nice? Yeah. Amongst us human beings in this room tonight, see the able, not the label. Jim St. Clair from our research back in 1993, I really like this as well. Autism is a way of being. It is pervasive. It colours every experience, every situation, perception, thought, emotion, and encounter, every aspect of existence. It is not possible to separate the autism from the person. And again, I'll say it again because it's worth it. See the able, not the label. Very much part of the TWP ethos. And again, Asperger's, you heard of that. ASPI, that's been mentioned tonight, on the spectrum. ASD, autism spectrum disorder. Well, actually, is it a disorder? No, probably not. In fact, no, it's not. Person with autism, there's, what do I call this person? What do I call, this person with autism? They're not carrying something around with them. There's no baggage. Are an autistic person, but actually just call them by their name, just talk to them, right? You do know autism as a spectrum. We're going to touch on that today. It's seen as a spectrum. I could be here, which I won't be, but I could be, and so for Jenny, we're talking about this literally all day. There's so much to cover. And I'll say again, everyone experiences autism in a unique way. Some may be more able to cope and function in the world than others, and that's okay. And some will need more support. There's certain things I need support with, especially in the lead up to today, writing this and then wondering the natural anxieties, you know, what's the audience going to be look like? How am I going to stutter my words? And then following Jenny, obviously. But the point is, but the point is, we all need support in various aspects of daily life, okay? Because no one's perfect, and as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. We've touched upon the emotions. Autistic people can have difficulties identifying and describing their own and others' emotions, same in adults. A lot of autistic people don't know what they are feeling or how to express it. There's different levels of good and bad emotions, more or less sensitive to and are affected by others' emotions. They don't express emotion in the usual way, and as a result can appear more cold and sensitive, or perhaps are overly emotional. And again, touched upon earlier, masking is copying the emotion of others, not showing the true self or feelings. So very many emotional challenges. And a big part, again, as we've spoken about tonight, is the communication aspect. And because of society and communication that involves this key information being communicated, others' emotions, others' perspective and others' intentions, well, all of that information is used to decide how we react to situations. But autistic people may have to learn and apply those skills and the social rules somewhat manually. And this can lead to some difficulties in social communication and social interaction. Some of the differences may include understanding body language or the tone of voice that we touched upon earlier, and facial expressions, or picking out relevant information from a conversation, understanding metaphors or abstract ideas, or taking longer to process information and responding, or expressing thoughts and emotions with words. So very many social communication challenges. Perhaps the best visual I can show you today, and I'm more than happy to send out this presentation afterwards, but this is a real good sort of visual of the sort of autistic brain. We have two people, and this person is simply saying, "Hi, how are you?" And he's waving. And the response from the autistic person is, "The maglev train in Shanghai is the fastest train in the world." And what do you mean, what? And all these thoughts and feelings are going around the autistic person's head at this time. And the train, I don't know why it used to be trains. It's real passionate interest. I've never got round that. I used to work with a guy who lived in Ivory and Backs, and he knew every single train route, bus route, with his trains. It's a fascination. And his superpower, because they are superpowers, he could name me every bus route from Ivory to Wickham and far beyond. He just knew, and incredible. But this person's maintaining eye contact with me. I don't know what to say to "Hi, how are you?" I don't know what to say to that. I don't understand what you're saying to me. I need more time to process this question you've asked me. So all of these things are going around, all of these thoughts to this question, "Hi, how are you?" And believe you me, this person will be able to know that this person is confused with the response. And how does that make them feel? And the core of this is one's mental well-being. So I'm more than happy to leave this up and certainly send it out. We spoke a lot earlier. We can have a bit of, not that I'm dismissing the seriousness of the subject, but we can do things with a smile on our face. We certainly do at Talkback. And just to carry on the conversation, we're taking things literally, as Jenny was saying before, autistic people do take things very literally, so much so that I have to, with two of our members that talk back, I have to put an alarm on my phone, because I've told them I will call you at 10 o'clock, and that's what they expect. And if I'm late by 10:01 or 2, let alone 3, 4 or 5, I will cause an effect on them for the rest of the day. And I know that because they will tell me. So I have, with 2 people, my phone will go off and I press the call button. One's at 9:30 actually. At 9:30. And I know for a fact that if I am early's all right, but even 9:01, 2, certainly no later than 2, that will have an effect on her for the whole day. And bless her, knowing her as I do, she'll be worried. One, call me, what's the matter with you, where you been? And whereas, but that will affect her whole day. So, as I say, I'm not going to ask you or test you, but we've heard of, we all say it, it's raining cats and dogs. You heard that saying? You're driving me up the wall. We all say that, don't we? Hold your tongue. Pull your socks up. Well, I hope you don't. Certainly don't say that to autistic people. Pull your socks up. Can I pick your brain for a minute? What does that mean, really? Or the common one that we all use, timeless. That's, I'll be a minute. I'll get back to you in a minute. When? But with services, etc., with you know, I'll call you back later. Well, when later? But the point is it can have an effect on an autistic person. So if you say, I don't know, I'll give you an update by 3 o'clock. I might not know the answer, but I will call you by 3 o'clock this afternoon with an update either way. Not just I'll be in, I'll call you later. When? There is a funny story, because we can, you know. You can't do some things with a smile on your face. There's a story at Talkback, and I told the ladies, I'm going to have to say it here. There's a story, one of our members at Talkback, his mate, he's at home with his mum, and he's autistic. And his mum said to him, can you go down the shop, see if there's any milk? So he goes down the corner shop. Goes down the aisle. He goes home empty-handed. His mum says, well, where's the milk? He said, well, I didn't buy it, you just told me. See if there was, and yes, there was. But actually, this person was right. And we had a laugh at that. That was a story of a friend of a member. But then the next day, my wife, not autistic, I was getting my car cleaned in Aylesbury in the Tesco, and I was walking out the door, and I knew it was coming, a massive shopping list, whatever, and that's fine. She said to me, she texted me, there's a serious point to this, by the way, she texted me saying, can you look at the women's slippers? And I went, oh, for God's sake, no, I'll do that now. That was boring. I was right weirdo taking a picture of the women's slippers for you. But it made me think, and I thought, hang on, that's right fun with this. I took a picture of the women's slippers, I sent it back saying, yeah, I've done that. But it made me, in all seriousness, because I was waiting for my car for a long time to get washed and cleaned, but actually, it's what we take for granted with regards to communication. Now, Rachel, my wife, said, can you look at women's slippers for me? Now, I knew perfectly well what she meant. I'm going to send her a load of photos of all the aisle, and I'm going to pick up 3 or 4 pairs, and she's going to take half an hour to decide, whatever. But I thought to myself, because the milk story was told to me the day before, what we take for granted. Whereas the person with the milk was quite right. So the anxiety and the sort of social cues and that can have a real effect. Following on, and in all seriousness, Jenny did touch upon this as well, it's what I want to sort of talk about is the meanings and intent can be lost in translation in both directions. I might be talking to Jenny. What's one of your hobbies? Gardening. So I might be offering Jenny the talkback gardening head volunteer role, and Jenny might be going, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever, yeah, I'm interested. Can I go now type thing? Well, actually, Jenny might be very excited by my offer of head gardener at talkback in our allotment. But this is where we have to be really holistic in our thinking. It's the tone of voice, and yeah, all right, I'll do it. Or not looking with eye contact, that sort of thing. So we've got to be careful with that lost in translation in both directions. And that's, again, my learning, working with many people over the past 11 years. But it's fascinating. And again, Jenny might be very, very interested in the head garden role to talk about, but we'll have that neutral facial expression. But again, may well feel content and happy about the offer I've just made. And she might answer bluntly or sound rude without intending to be. So it's this real sort of holistic overview of our communication with people. And to do that, and again, I sound very simplistic, I am a simple chap, is getting to know the person in front of you over time. Again, just to sort of emphasise eye contact, we spoke about a lot, the processing of body language, the tone of voice, missing sarcasm in humour, that's a big one. Really have to be careful. And again, don't mind telling you, I'm quite a sarcastic person, and I've learned the hard way over the years. I lost the trust of one of our members for a good 2 or 3 weeks. I made what I thought was just a silly joke. It was back in lockdown days. Our social groups were run online, and she wasn't too sure about joining because of this weird Zoom thing, and technology anxieties and worries about that. And over time, good for her, she joined, and every time I joined, somewhat halfway through the session, from coming from yet another team's call, then over a period of time, every time I joined halfway through, she was talking on this call. And I said to her, look, Heather, we can't shut you up. Brilliant type of thing. But no, she thought, with my throwaway, silly, sarcastic humour, that I was telling her off. She was talking too much. So humour, and especially with sarcasm, you really have to be careful. And how many people do you know who don't like small talk? They're not spoken today, you have to see that later. But again, autistic people with small talk. With the literal mind, well, I can see what the brain's like. Yes, it's big brains. So what? But again, we can have an effect, and people tell me, let's just stop, get to the point, Simon. And you're probably thinking that as well, and that's all right. But don't care about it. I don't care. Yeah, I'm all right, mate. Yeah, no, I watched telly last night, whatever. I'm here to join the session. Let's just get on with it. And they're not being rude. That's the way their literal mind works. And to touch upon actually what Grace and Naomi was saying around right at the start of this evening, it's about getting to know the person. So other things that may affect social interaction, the perceived social demands, one's attention capacity, the topic of discussion, maybe having a real anxious effect on the person, maybe feel awkward, doesn't want to talk about it due to their community beliefs, whatever it is. Environmental distractions. I can hear the hum of this. I'm all right with that. But actually, an autistic person could really only be tuned into that.
Yeah, that's it.
So you've got to consider the environment as well. And to be fair, there's been various, as is normal, and there is one, there's a phone message that beeps. And again, I'm just, I'll be totally transparent, and the iPad over here, which can carry on, by the way. But an autistic person will be very, very distracted by that, and that's the only thing they can tune in. So the environment is incredibly crucial. But actually, linking back to the mental health topic at the start of this and the stress bucket, we don't know, without talking to somebody, they might be affected in their interaction with you by something that happens the previous evening, or they may be worried about future events in the day. And how do we know that? Well, we talk to them. How are you? But it's not, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right, mate, let's crack on. It's, no, actually, how are you? How was your evening? Or what have you got on? Because they might be going to the dentist later, or they might have a doctor's appointment. There might be an argument at home the previous evening. But all of these things can have an effect on the social interaction in the here and now when we're talking to the person. And again, what you're not to do is take my word for it. This is Nicola. She's a talkback member of staff. She's in the communications department. She is a trainer. She's autistic. We touched upon sensory sensitivities. Don't be loud if you don't need to be. But what struck me, don't be judgmental if you see someone having a meltdown, and don't jump to conclusions. We already feel embarrassed and insecure. That's directly from an autistic person who's a colleague of mine who taught that. Fascinating and very, very powerful and emotional. That one. I must mention mental health and autism. Now, autistic people are more likely to experience mental health conditions. Over a third of autistic adults have reported serious mental health problems. Some research suggests over 70% of those with autism experience mental health conditions. 40 to 80% can be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Spoke about that a lot at some point in their life, compared to up to 15% of the general population. Why? Quite simply, from being autistic in a non-autistic world, individuals can appear more autistic when distressed or discomfort, which leads to a misdiagnosis. There's more challenges, as we know now from the autistic community. Autistic people struggle to predict the world, which leads to more uncertainty, less perceived control, which leads to more stress and anxiety, which will mean that they're less likely to communicate when there is a problem, less able to recognise anxiety, which leads to a higher build-up of stress that goes unchecked. And again, I'm going to mention the stress bucket as well. I did smile when it was presented earlier, but actually, with Grace and Naomi's sort of delivery on the general life stresses, well, you've got autism on top of that, actually. You've got your communication difficulties or challenges. You've got, on top of that, you've got your sensory sensitivities. On top of that, we have this unpredictable environment, both internal and external. So the bucket's going to, it's getting bigger. Change. The sudden changes with there's some temporary traffic lights that are being put up overnight and the bus is late. On top of that, we've got difficulties identifying our own emotions and feelings. On top of that, we've got these big life events. And then the coping strategies, the routine, the stimming, special interests, and the breathing exercises. Well, actually, the bucket's overflowing now, which then leads to the meltdown, the shutdown, the anxiety, this lack of control. And when we feel lack of control in life, we feel anxious. We feel out of control. It's not nice. It's the worst feeling in the world, surely. So, which leads to, unfortunately, again, with the literal mind, the inquisitive mind of an autistic person, then mental health is a dual diagnosis, and I'll come back to that shortly. But, as you can imagine, mental health and autism is extremely, to be fair, to be transparent with you, really quite dangerous. I want to just, before I just move on to what talk about being conscious of time, I just want to follow on from the routine, really. There's some really nice things to say, actually. Autistic people can, and now you know, and perhaps you already did know, that can find the world to be unpredictable and chaotic. So routines can really help a person cope with everyday life, reduce the anxiety and stress, feel more in control and know what's coming next and to keep focused. So I wonder, actually, do you know people, have you come across people who have the need for a set routine in the day, whether it be eating sandwiches or getting up at dead on 8 o'clock and then having a cup of coffee, going into the shower, getting ready for the day in their particular unique way? Well, that actually is why. Probably is because it's how they cope with everyday life in this unpredictable and chaotic world. But actually, that's quite a nice thing, isn't it? Because feeling in control, and that's what we all go for, surely. Oh, I love special interests, actually. I do, I really do. And with Jenny, you can talk about literally anything. And to be fair, for talk about professional staff, yeah, you really can have a conversation about anything. I work with people who collect Coke can bottle tops. Of course I can talk about that. Because, as Jenny said, having a special interest provides a person structure and predictability that we all yearn for. Interests and objects don't demand anything back, do they? Isn't it nice? Isn't it a lovely thing to say? It promotes relaxation and happiness and reduces anxiety. Fantastic, good. I really love this one, and it provides an escape from the world. Don't we all need what that? I know I do. I read my book every night before I go to bed, or watch something on Netflix or whatever it is. But actually, we all need an escape from the world. And autistic people are different, and it makes them feel safe and secure. As do we all. And they're a brilliant conversation starter, you know. I went to, I met a person, and he had an outhouse, a massive shed full of Transformer toys. It must have been £2,000 or £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 worth. I've got an interest in Transformers, but I related that to my childhood, where I used to watch it, so I could have a conversation. But it's very important for people. My mind was constantly whirring with thoughts, worries, and concerns. The time spent with my intense interest was the only time in which I had a clear mind. It gave me that much sought after relaxation. It's a quote from a young autistic person from the National Autistic Society. But isn't that what we want as well? No, I do. And Jenny's on it. Doesn't matter what you think of them. Bill Gates, industry leader. Got a few bob in the bank, isn't he? Billion.
1 or 2 years.
Courtney Love, I'm not going to read that one out. No, I'll just do it. We've got Lionel Messi, the footballer, probably arguably the best footballer ever lived. He's got a form of autism. Anthony Hopkins, world famous actor, being one, you know, arguably one of the top 10 films in the world. Jerry Seinfeld, Michelangelo, Tim Burton, Susan Boyle, you know, just a handful that's known out there. But by communities coming together and by us having those real how are you conversations, we can get more connected to the industry things, because there are only 30% of people in paid employment. That's not okay. And it might be that the person just needs a quiet space, or have a choice of a quiet space in their office, or a mentor or somebody in their workplace that they can go to if they need them. Not every day, not every week, not every month, but having that choice, that opportunity to have a mentor or a person of trust that they can talk to should there be a problem will go a long way. Am I right? I'm going to something. I'm just going to, as I say, this is what we do at Talkback. I really do hope this is the first of many conversations with the community. There's a lot I need to learn from you. I hope you've picked up a few things. Talkback are a charity. We are commissioned by Milton Keynes Council. I have my council colleagues in the room, and I have Angelo. If you want to know what Talkback's really about, not now, because I'll just put it on him, speak to Angela. We have a group called Uniquely Wired Together for Change, which empowers autistic people to take control of their health and including their mental health. That's by coming together. There's so many people that feel that loneliness and isolation. Why always me? So we run regular sort of social opportunities to reduce that isolation, to get people talking, to get their voice heard. As well as that, we're based on the Christ the Cornerstone, so once a month we go back to nature. We work with the Parks Trust, the wonderful charity in MK with the 14 Parks Trust places, some wonderful places. And it's literally a walking group for those who are anxious about meeting new people, but want to meet new people, and it's just amongst nature. We've been to William Lake, Howe Park Woods, and very, many others. But it's and for those interested, it's a way of connecting people. It's and to educate about the natural world as well. We do have various relationship courses as well. Autistic people with the various social communication challenges, obviously relationships are affected. We have wellness courses that's actually going there looking at cancer checks. There's nothing out there. I don't know what you think about that, about having the need to get your body checked. If it's not normal for you, get it checked out. We didn't see too much out there for autistic people with learning disability to educate on common female and male cancers. We did it. We do it. We have a parent forum. It meets quarterly with the council. And it's over to you as a parent carer group. What do you want the council to listen to you guys about? What is on your mind? The common worry is when I'm no longer here, what's going to happen to my son or daughter? That's going to be a forum coming up. We have a parent forum. We have an employment group, but actually it's not your standard employment offering. It's based on self-esteem, self-confidence, as well as that. All goes hand in hand. I must finish. My autistic self, I've had 54 referrals since January the 2nd of this year. 95% are from talking therapies and mental health services. There's so many people who have that misdiagnosis. There's so much good work going on working with the children, but actually there's a hell of a lot have been missed. And what we do is my autistic self. There isn't a significant post-diagnostic support. People get their letter. Now what? And actually, I'm really, really angry because why wasn't it picked up when I was a young child? Because I had to struggle through school. That has an effect on their mental health. I'm going to quote Angelo. I've asked his permission. Angelo was diagnosed in his early 50s, and Angelo told me this as part of a forum last September. It's now coming up to June. And he said, up until I got my diagnosis, I didn't understand the world, and the world didn't understand me. It has a real effect on somebody. So we do run my autistic self, which is bringing a small amount of people together to come and learn and talk and relate to each other on that personal level, that peer-to-peer support, talking anything, the groups, the group members soon run it. They relate, and then hopefully we can provide them extra social opportunities for their self-esteem and to sort of grow as a person. But the hunt for information begins once I've got a new diagnosis. That's not okay. I was sad for the childhood I could have had. So whilst there's substantial work going on with one's mental health, there's a lot that needs to be done. And as I say, 54 referrals already, really, 95%. And like Angelo, having that diagnosis in his 50s, I don't know what that would feel like. I just cannot imagine that. But what I do know is, I know Angelo pretty well. He's a loyal member, wonderful artist. Come and talk to us, come and meet our autistic members. They'll talk to you all day long about this fascinating thing. So children's, we finished the slide, children with, I can, and so can adults. And Angelo is a living example of that, and is in this room. Got to thank you, got to thank the council, especially for you guys as well. And Jen, it's been a pleasure working with you. Your passion is very, very clear, and I hope it picks up on mine. And I hope this is the first of many sort of sessions that we can have. And more than happy to be gentle with the questions. And if you If you've enjoyed it, great. If you haven't, then my name's Jenny. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Simon, for that. What shall we call you, Jenny, now? For that interesting. No, it's been great to have such great talks tonight. It's a lot of information to digest, and I'm glad that they'll be able to share slides with us, and we'll share those on the mailing list. Again, if for whatever reason it gets to Monday and you haven't received them, could you poke us on Instagram or Facebook and say, hey, you said you'll send us something, what's going on? And so we want to give time. Oh, yes, please. Go
I
ahead.
would just like to say something. I was very impressed and pleased to see so many people have come. There's a lot of work for us to be done. I didn't go to a doctor until I was 49. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 53, which was handy because apparently the life expectancy for autistic adults is 54. There is a serious side to autism that people should be aware of. Because many autistic adults usually are through suicide or any other means. So there is a serious side to it. So don't take autism as some kind of game. People, some kind of social interaction game that people are playing. There is a serious. It's about life. It's about life expectancy and opportunities for autistic people. Autistic people of colour.
Yeah, much lower life expectancy. Yeah.
And the last point is, if people would like to, if you've got access to a computer, visit MK Autism website. That will give you an endless amount of information about autism and Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes is blessed at the moment with good resources for autism. Thanks to people with pullback and other groups.
I will, Angela, that's a really good point. I will put that, this is Angela, by the way. I will put that link into when I send you the slides, right? I'm making note. Thank you, Angela.
Yes, we've got a resources slide.
Yes, please do. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really helpful, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation for our community, because I think we're probably one of the most notorious about giving every other reason on the face of the earth other than this could actually be autism. And so I'm hoping that this conversation with us in the room starts helping us bring that conversation to our spaces, whether it's home, whether it's church, whether it's community group. Just ask the question, and let's try and change that narrative that it's the end. It's not the end. There is support. We can. MK is particularly blessed. I come from Reading, and trust me, the services are night and day. So as much as we might want to complain about the services we get in MK, and I'm sure there's a lot more to go, and we make no mistake to promise you gold and dust, but we do say you actually have progressed. So just to bear that in mind. We want to take a bit of time for questions. I'm aware it's 8:30, so if you will grace us with a few more minutes, we want to make sure while they're here, face to face, we ask them these questions, and anything that we're not able to answer tonight, we'll try and get a response to you. But yes, we also want to ask, if you would like a second part of this conversation, we're probably suggesting online, because if you're like me, I found that really, really fascinating and useful. But I'm thinking, I don't know how I can explain that word to word to somebody else to understand it the way I understood it tonight. And I'm wanting to say, no, you come with me, and then they will tell you, those guys. Because I feel like they will do a much more accurate picture of what actually is going on.
So Jenny and Simon are both open to, Simon certainly is, to talking with you afterwards. So we'll make sure that Simon's details go out if you want to contact him directly or you want to ask us. So Simon can take that on board. And we know you might have lots of questions about yourself, your families, your people that you care about. Like Angela said, we're also trying to tease out for these guys, what about your faith or your culture might actually be something that you want to explore a bit more. Maybe you want to think about how does this play with your spiritual beliefs or your cultural beliefs, or how, if you do want to take the step, like Jenny said, to speak to your SEND person at your school or your health visitor, how you can explain your beliefs. That'd be really helpful for us to think about tonight, to equip you so you feel really, really confident when you leave here, if you should ever need to take that next step. So yeah, the floor is open. I wonder who wants to
Yeah,
check something.
questions or
Ah,
comment? Joy, Pastor Joy.
How easy or difficult is it to get a diagnosis, especially as children?
Children, it's a long wait. It's a very long wait. I know in Bedfordshire, somebody that I referred last year is on an 18-month waiting list. So it is a very long wait. I mean, not everybody can put money out there and go private. You can go private, you can get it done very quickly within a week. That's a hell of a lot of money. I would always say that if they're ticking all the boxes, you cannot go wrong putting the strategies in place to manipulate their environment, adapt your communication style, be aware of their sensitivities, do all the necessary things to keep their mental health in check. Don't wait for the label. There's no side effects for doing those techniques and strategies. It's not like I'm saying go and try this drug and give it to your little child. These are the things that will make a real difference immediately.
Can I just follow on? Sorry.
yeah.
And because you said keep note of things, but then I haven't a clue what's going on. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know it's autism. I just think it's a stubborn child.
Yeah.
Or a rude child.
Yeah.
Or adult, for that matter. Because
Yeah.
what that make you laugh when I was sitting listening to it, and I'm thinking, God, maybe we're all autistic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but,
Got a little
can you give us a sense? Just a sense of the process. I wrote my questions before and asked them anyway.
Yeah.
So what is the process? What is the starting point? And where do you go?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So the starting point for a school-age child is your GP, your health visitor, school centre, go in that direction of getting those professionals to do a referral to community paediatricians. Now, bear in mind the things that they're going to ask you about. Start watching your child very carefully so that you can give them the right answers. Because often, we'll go into the GP and we'll say, well, we want to be assessed for autism. And they fire all these questions at you and you're like, oh, sure. So check, remind yourself, when did their speech develop? What's their style of play like? How do they interact? Do they have any special interests? All the things that we looked at, and when you get your copy of the slides, you'll look at all those things on the list. Think, am I seeing that in my child? And did I see that from day one? Then you're equipped to answer the questions, because they always give you a pre-screening tool, the social communication difficulties questionnaire. And in that, they're asking you to go right back to day one. What was their play like? All these types of questions. Do they have any unusual mannerisms? And if you haven't been ready for that, you may think, I don't know. And you're not going to get the referral. So start doing your kind of own checklist in your mind. Are these the things that I'm seeing? Take that to the professional that's going to do the referral. So that will speed up the process. Sometimes it's very subtle as well. So it could be that, your child is ticking some of the boxes, but not all. So you're not quite sure, do I still go to the GP? I don't want to be a pain, I go to the GP and they say, don't be silly. Actually, if you're that concerned and you can see that this is impacting on your child's mental health, then go to the GP and start that conversation. Even if it turns out they say, well, actually, they're not on the spectrum, but there is something else going on there. And this is the way to manage it. So it doesn't always have to be a diagnosis of autism. It could be something else going on there. So go forward and do that.
Yeah.
And last question.
Yeah.
I got yourself an answer.
I'm here. That's what I'm there for.
No. It's going to be probably general for all of us.
Yeah.
How we're coming to these sessions and they're brilliant. I mean, fantastic. I'm so much more aware of what's going on around me, and how are we going to make parents more aware, because they don't know that it's an issue or it's going to be an issue ongoing, they don't know what to ask.
No.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah,
And
Yeah.
and perhaps a fear for most parents is they don't want their child possibly to be diagnosed with a mental illness. Just
Yeah,
for-
yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
I hear
they-
you.
or not.
Mm.
So the awareness of all these things is lacking in communities.
Absolutely,
shall I
it
say.
is. Yeah.
Okay, so how are we
Yeah.
going to spread it?
Mm.
Spread the butter.
Keep
you know?
coming to these
Yeah.
awareness days, awareness evenings. I had a resource slide here, but for some reason it's not showing. But I would say, you know, the National Autistic Society website, step-by-step guidance, what you're looking for, what your process should be. How do you go ahead and get the school to support your child? What sorts of things can you do at home differently? All of that is on there. The other thing that's really, oh, it's come up really tiny. Let's see, fingers crossed. Here we go. This one is a very good one. This NHS Guide for Parents on the Autism Journey. Pretty much from the first inkling, but I'm not 100% sure. Go through and check with the checklist. And it will guide you. If you're seeing this, you go that direction. If you're seeing that, you go that direction. If it's more mental health, you go that direction. That's a really good resource. So that one. Parents' Guide to Autism, Autism Speaks. A very American language on that one because it is an American site. But I like the way parents who have gone through the journey talk about their journey. And exactly what you've just said, they're saying exactly those things about, you know, I'm not quite sure if I'm on the right track. Should I be going down this route? Should I be going down a different route? It even has a lot of discussions, you'll find it on all of these, about medication. You know, when do we think about the role of medication? Are we medicating the anxiety? Are we medicating something else? Because we can't medicate the autism. But there's a lot of comorbid conditions that might be running alongside it. And nobody really wants to pump their child with like heavy mental health medications. But there is a point where, you know, they do need something to take the edge off of that challenging behaviour. Ambitions About Autism is the toolkit. That's my favourite. So that's like, right, what do we do when they're having a meltdown in Tesco's? What do we do when they won't get out the car and go into school? What do we do when they just refuse to eat the Sunday dinner that I've really carefully prepared for them because they don't like the smell of the sprouts? You know, all the little things, the little everyday things, the toolkit gives you those answers. I always recommend the Jessica Kingsley publishers because it's the biggest publishers on autism and ADHD in the UK. Every book, every research paper, DVDs. But what I like about Jessica Kingsley is there's one suitable for siblings. There's one suitable for your childminder. There's one suitable for the school, for mum, for dad, for the person who's on the spectrum themselves. There's ones to do with relationships. Transitions is a big, big issue. Transitioning from primary school to high school to college. Often it's at that point where they enter mental health services. So we need to be ready. We don't want to wait until, you know, it's August and we're 4 weeks away from them going into college, going into the workplace, and then we start putting a plan in place. From the minute they start year 10, we want to start putting a plan in place for that transition so that we're ready and we're in control. Because a lot of these things that are triggering anxiety are going to leave them feeling out of control. And they're going to need containing. And they're going to look to their parents and the people around them in their support network to do that containing. So you will get a copy, won't they, of the slide? So tap into those. But the first port of call, I always go to the NAS.
But they have, sorry to interrupt, they've got some really good visuals, little short, snappy videos. One's called Amazing Things Happen. It's brilliant. So a lot of video resources as well. Yeah.
And I think something I wanted to add is along that question of how do you know the list, is that if you're anything from, I'm Kenyan by nationality and heritage, but if you know anything about how we somehow raise our kids, is sometimes I may leave my child with grandma up until a certain age and then I will then live with them for the rest of the time. It's important for you to find ways to ask grandma those questions. Grandma might say, no, my child is not demonic and everything else in between. But in your own wisdom, find ways to ask that question. Oh, grandma, when I left, you know, what was so and so like? Or, you know, when you send them to the shop, what do they feel like? Because that will help you get that back. You know, Dr. Jenny is saying, you know, they're going to ask you from the beginning. And sometimes because of circumstances and immigration and everything in between, there could be segments that I would have missed. So it's important for you to start thinking, oh my goodness, if I think this could be a possibility, let me start going back while grandma is still with us. Let me start going back when my elder sister is with us, so that at least I have a full record of their upbringing. The second thing I want to think about is when we have our faith, whether you're, whichever faith you allies to, is if your first point of call is prayer or spiritual support, maybe consider if the child will be present, what is something that they will take literally? What is something maybe you want to pray out of their presence because it might trigger them? So think about your spiritual practices. How is that going to be viewed by this person who's very literal, very bright, very much have their own set ways? If I say I'm going to church for 2 hours and the prayer runs, is my mind thinking, I said 2 hours and my child is going to panic? I need to excuse myself from leading the prayer and give to somebody else so that I take them back to the routine, so that we have the nice rest of the day. So some of those questions, I want you to start thinking about, how is this interacting? Or maybe we're a big family of me, we're over 100, when all of us come, we're many, we like children. But that is overwhelming. So maybe I need to make sure that we either come and go or we come late and go. What are the things that you can do to make sure they still have that family time, they still have that big family feel, but protecting them to maybe members who might not quite understand? I told you 3 times and you're still doing. What can you do as a parent in a way, because you understand the culture, you understand what they're saying, you understand why they put the left hand and not the right hand and now they're offended. How can you protect your child or your adult from some of those awkward social interactions, because you probably have a bit more awareness now?
Absolutely. It's a village that you're creating to help you raise your child, from your grandma getting confident and comfortable talking to your teachers, because they will help you with the language when you go to your GP, actually making friends with those people. Maybe it is your Sunday school teacher who may have had some training, but getting comfortable drawing other people around you to help you look after. We think about young person, but also if it's your older person, if it's the college, if it's where they've got a part-time job, just getting more comfortable with including those people in the conversation of, actually, how is my loved one doing? How are they when they talk to you, kind of thing. I think I saw another question. Yeah.
It's just 2 questions. You mentioned that they each present different, you know. Does each individual stick to the same difficulties that they have, throughout their life, so that me as a parent I'm able to know, or do they fluctuate? That's question number 1. Number 2, you spoke about them going into mental health condition. Is that because we fail to manage them early, or do they naturally do it?
A little bit of both. So it's how they've experienced their social world from day one. All the things that they come up against. If you imagine that bucket is getting filled and filled and filled and filled, and you haven't got the ability to communicate it and release it and let go, at some point it's just going to become so overwhelming. And that may send you in the direction of mental health services. So I would say that the more aware you are as soon as possible of what their needs are, how you can manipulate the environment, how you can manipulate your language, how you can be aware of some of the behaviours that might be communicating something. So some of those behaviours that look, really naughty could be their only way of saying, I'm really anxious right now. So rather than them carrying that anxiety into the next year and the next year and other things coming on top of it, it's giving them the opportunity to reduce it, and then they're less likely to end up going into those mental health services. So there's that one. But the first one was,
Is a presentation the same from childhood to adulthood?
everybody's different.
You met one, you met one.
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
she's asking if say the child has a particular interest, say they're trained when they were children, will they carry that on to adulthood? Or if they like a particular routine, it's 9 o'clock, finishes at 3, will they carry that pattern up until adulthood? I think that's the question you're asking.
Yeah, I think they would. They would have that interest for life, the trained, but they might evolve that to, I don't know, football or something else.
So the routine.
Routine will always be there.
Over time, they modify,
Modify.
but only slightly. You won't get a drastic change like that.
No.
They'll modify.
And I
It
think
will take over time. It won't be a drastic change will freak them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, routine for those with a real routine, there always be a routine. Might not be 9 to 3 for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
But a routine would be there for, I think.
It will be out of their life. And the other things that will be consistently through is communication, social interaction, thinking styles. Those things we'll see running in the background. So those are the things that we just have to be aware of. You know, what language are we using? You know, remember they are literal thinkers. So just things to be mindful of. And it's not major changes. We're really just tweaking the way we do things. You know, and once we get into the habit of making those tweaks, it becomes second nature. But, you know, even me, 30 odd years later, I still make mistakes. I will say the wrong thing. And I'll end up with this blank face in front of me talking about Jenny. So we all make those mistakes, but that's okay. Put our hands up to it. But as long as we come back to basics and think, oh, I know why that didn't go down very well. I have to do it differently next time.
And that's I think an important one for our community, especially this idea is autism a disease that we can pray to be healed from, or we can go to this person to give us a special treatment. What I am hearing is actually it's the way that person is. It's not something that you are going to remove from them.
It's about the knowing and accepting the knowing.
Yes. So you can adapt, and also the person themselves will learn. They will learn how to manage themselves with support, but they will have that social communication way, or they will have that special interest. It's part of maybe their personality. That's how they are. So it's not something that we're looking to remove from them. Actually, we're just looking to make the world really comfortable for them, really a place where they can thrive with their special interests, with the way that they are. Yeah.
I think we've got 2 questions. We've got Celia. We've got Grace. Oh, 3. Okay. So let's start this way and then
Mine's not really a question.
Okay.
So maybe I could just say that this information you're giving is really important. Maybe an ask, are you doing it to schools, or are you making other kids aware of these autistic kind of people that they live with? They are in class with. Sometimes they get to witness their meltdowns, and they're just like, what is this, and how can I help out? If they because sometimes it's a friend. They have a friend in class. My daughter has a friend who was kind of showing all those, although he is not yet diagnosed, but she would come home and just let me know whatever happened in class. But she didn't know what to do because it's a friend. So she looks helpless, and now I had to come in and try to give her the information I had on how to support even in class. Also, another thing, am I forgetting my question? No, not really a question, but there are parents who come to know about this later on. Like, you didn't have any information, and now you're at a place of knowing, and you want to kind of have a community where you can all repair.
Together.
So I don't know if there's such a community where the parent and the kid can come in and talk about whatever they went through those times and have a kind of a repair.
Yes. There are a few. Most of them are in the voluntary sector. So I'm not sure what's still here in Milton Keynes. It was only active when I was here. So I'm in Bedford, so we've got Autism Bedfordshire. but it would be a branch of the National Autistic Society in every area that parents can access. The other thing is, I think for the youngsters, there's definitely not enough awareness in schools.
Right.
I can tell you that categorically. There's not enough awareness, and it would be lovely if it was either a part of the PSHE lessons where they would cover all the difference. I know they cover learning disabilities and some of the SEN issues, but to cover autism would be fantastic because, you know, children are being integrated into mainstream classrooms and maybe the school have a specialist unit, but they are in that mainstream classroom. And the other children are witnessing these behaviours and not understanding. I think as a parent, though, when your child comes home, do get the child-friendly books, either from the NAS or Jessica Kingsley, and the videos that completely explain, you know, why that meltdown happened, why did they do that, why did they say that? And I think it's really important for siblings, because like I said in my talk, often siblings come and see me and they end up with anxiety because they've been at the receiving end of the punches or the frustration or the meltdowns. They witness their parents parenting them in a very different way, and it feels like some kind of favoritism going on. Well, if I said that, you know, I'd be in serious trouble. You know, why can they say that and do that and get away with it? So it's helping them to understand that they are getting a different style of parenting to you. At school, they might actually be getting a different style of teaching to you because there is something different and unique about them. So it's helping them to understand, but totally agree. I wish there was more in school to help other children to understand.
And that's such a beautiful question for us, actually, and for Hannah and
It's
Simon.
kind of like
Yeah.
fed into what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
it's very interesting, you know, and well done for the presentation and the questions that are coming out of this, because it just makes me wonder, why isn't this more prevalent in schools? Because I've come across a lot of parents who really, really struggle to deal with children who are awaiting diagnosis and having to then support that child until some sort of diagnosis is made for that child to then go into a specialist school.
Yeah.
And I say this in relation to, I shared with Johnny earlier on, with my godson. You know, he is on the higher spectrum of being autistic. And when you actually were going through the presentation, you sort of trigger some of the things that my you know, he went through.
Yeah.
Like when we go out, he can never leave a park, especially if there's water.
Yes.
If you just stop,
Oh,
steps.
yeah.
But saying that, you know, we're learning a little bit more about autism, and society, I want to say understand. They are aware that you know we do have autistic kids in the community, but it doesn't get easier for parents to somehow support their children until that diagnosis is made. And I think by then, when it's done, it's just that it also triggers their mental health so much that it even takes them even longer to come back to some normality. So I don't know whether or not there's something, that gap in between. You know, are schools equipped to deal with kids before they do make that transition from you know, mainstream school to a specialist school? Maybe something that we can look at.
The transition plans. And I think that's such a big trigger for mental health is transitions. You know, and just at the start of a new school year, you know, going from year 1 to year 2, different classroom, different teacher, you know, sometimes they might move around the class, the curriculum feels different. That is a major trigger for a child. And although, you know, all our SENCOs are trained and you know, they all do the training, you've got your behaviour specialist teams that come into the schools and they support them with that, it's still really difficult for that child who then goes home a big ball of anxiety. And the parents have to unpick that and manage it right up until the change actually happens and beyond. And sometimes, you know, in isolation, you know, maybe they haven't got a support network, they haven't got other people to give them a break, and they're doing that at the detriment of their mental health.
And you know that you've got family members who have to earn a living, they're busy working. So really haven't got the time to even lend support to that individual who needs it.
And I think one thing I will push back a little bit is that, number one, we are trying to engage with CNW at large to say, this is what you're saying. So we're saying, please come to the 24th and say it. We say all the time with the wisdom principle, but we don't represent ourselves. It has to come from you. So we've said, you know what? We're tired of being the middleman. You come and let them come and let them shout the questions, because only then can we influence the service delivery. So if you are available on 24th, please, please, please raise this as a major topic. Number 2, unfortunately, we were supposed to have Raf as the commissioner for children. Again, we had the commissioners last time, who are the people making up what are the deliverables and the outcomes from certain services and who are they going to commission to. We're saying, come. Before you write that specification, come. Come and hear from us what we're saying. You should add this as a mandatory. You need to show this outcome. If you're going to get this tender, this outcome must be at the end of your 3-year delivery. So that's the second point of call. So maybe we'll try and get Raf to come to that conversation. So then we'll have CNWL and Raf in there. Because the reason why we have this leaders forum is because we kept being told, it's not, where are we going to find them? Who are the leaders? Where? So we say, okay, fine. We'll become organized. We'll be strategic about it. We're representing probably now, the last time we met was about 40 to 50 of you. And now there's larger. So now we're saying you cannot ignore 50 leaders who are representing communities and faith groups of probably in the thousands of numbers, if I look at the multiple hats that you all wear. So now it's down to them to say, do you know what? We have given you representation. You know how to reach. We've come. So deliver. So there is that pushback, and we need you to come and push with us. Otherwise, it's just two ladies shouting from the top of their lungs, saying, do something. But we know that at the end of the day, it is the communities. Number 2, what can we do about letting the community know? You are the first point of call. What you've learned, the little that you've learned, the little that you've remembered, share that. Number 2, if you want these sessions in your communities, I'm sure there's some lovely, wonderful people. We can organize with them and say, do you know what? We're going to do another one of these, whether we do them once a year or once every 6 months. If you think it is an urgent topic right now, say so. We try as much as possible as the wisdom principle. We don't want to drive ourselves. We don't care what targets are being pushed at us from NHS and everyone in between. If it doesn't solve your solutions, we're out. So you have to feed that. You will shape how we look and feel in the next coming years. So please, if it's something that is top of your list, say so. And we will do our best to push the boundaries. Whether they listen or not is a different conversation. But at least we'll do our best to represent ourselves.
Just one question. Over the 30 years you've worked, what's been the toughest challenge when it comes to dealing with autism? What's the biggest improvement you've seen in that?
If I go back to when I first started in CAMS nearly 30 years ago, it was this almost tennis ball effect. So somebody would come into CAMS for autism assessment. Oh, it's not us, go to the paediatrician. They'd go to the paediatrician. Oh, it's not us, it's CAMS. And it was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And nobody was picking it up. And it was screaming out, let's have a pathway. Please, let's have a pathway. And I remember sitting down with a wonderful paediatrician, Dr. Thacker, and we wrote the pathway. And we said, right, this is what we're going to do. This is what goes to CAMS. This is what comes to the peds. This is the age cutoff. This is what we're looking at. And no more bouncing to and fro, because it was just crazy. Parents were coming and saying, yeah, but I went there and they said it wasn't them. And then I went there and they said it wasn't them. And then somebody else told me to try this and it didn't work. And it was just getting crazy. And then the next thing that I noticed that was missing was parent training. So after the diagnosis, it was like, well, this diagnosis, off you go, yeah. I was like, no. So with the voluntary sector organisation in Milton Keynes, we did the parent training programme, and it was an 8-week programme, and every week we covered a different topic. And I didn't want it to be the type of programme where you can only get in if your child's at a special school, you can only get in if they got EHCP, you can only get in if they got a diagnosis. If they're kicking off in Tesco's and they're ticking the boxes, come. That's how I set up that parent training programme. And that's what is needed. What was really interesting though, after we did it, rolled it out for parents for a couple of years, we started doing one for siblings in Milton Keynes. Now these siblings were 10 to 12-year-olds. Not only did they run with this information, they went and they taught it to their peers at school.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why grown adults can't get this right. We had these 10 and 12-year-olds in a group that were siblings, and they ran with all the information, exactly what we taught the parents, we taught the siblings. And they went and they shared it with their class, and they shared it with their teachers, and they ran with it. And then eventually carers MK started doing it as well. But I think, you know, the most important thing is, you know, if they're ticking the boxes, put the things in place. Absolutely.
I think if I understand your question, you are asking a success story of an autistic person who she has worked with. Is that what you're asking?
No, what she's answered is what
Is the right one.
She's answered
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we got the right question. Okay. Now, I'm aware of time, and I'm probably sure we have many, many more questions and answers. So, am I getting a resounding yes to a part 2?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so,
I
yes.
also think part 2 would be good solutions for parents, just simple solutions. I was lucky, I worked in the environment, so I was able to support my son. And actually, his school eventually did listen when they put in breaks for him after break time. So he had his crunchy munchies, which were cucumber and celery, which used his jaws so that he, well, after it would help him come down after playtime to be ready to learn. And he couldn't say when he needed time out. So he had a card on his table that was red that just said it was red and green. So when he needed time out, he flipped it over so that it was red, and he was able to just leave the classroom. So I think yes, this is brilliant, but I also think there's so many questions now going on. How can I support somebody? How can I change my language? How can I learn how to sit on the floor and wait until things have calmed down and co-regulate? So, you know, happy to do it if I can.
Yes.
Within that,
Yeah.
coming from my special needs school education, and with how I approached my own son, who didn't get diagnosed until he was 20, sorry. And do you want to tell the room your other role?
Yeah, I don't know, I didn't come here for that. So they can find that out another time.
It's helpful to help, because
You want me to?
what we do is sometimes it's really hard when you give somebody, I love the website, but we want a personal connection. So I want to know your face. I want to know that you understand. Yes, so.
So my name is Rachel Barrow, and up until December this year, I'm a special needs teacher. I have a son with autism. I also have a daughter that was diagnosed with ADHD 3 weeks ago. I myself had severe mental health problems over the last 4 years. I had to come out of teaching because I couldn't manage the expectations and the pressure and the paperwork and everything else that went with it. My new role is within the NHS. I am people participation lead for the NHS, working across Bedfordshire, Linton, and Milton Keynes. So if you're a parent or carer or a service user that's using mental health services within Milton Keynes at the moment, you can come and see me, join my Working Together group, and actually be on forums to make a difference within the NHS. We don't do interview panels, so we will give you interview panel training. We will give you training for communication, quality improvement projects. We will give you training to chair a meeting so that you empower yourself with skills that you never thought you had. My mental health was so poor this time last year that I thought I couldn't do anything. I didn't even think that I had transferable skills as a teacher. Yesterday I organised, over the last few months, I've organised an event for Bedfordshire, Linton and Milton Keynes. 180 people came from across the services, CNWL and ELFT and BLMK, and I spoke my mental health story. 280 people. So I started working through the Wisdom project. So, you know, that was when I came to an event recently. So if you have to be within the services, if you are struggling with any mental health issues at the moment, you can get advice
without having to go to your GP, and that's through the Wellbeing College in Bletchley. There's no referral systems. You can phone up, go online, get hold of their receptionist, get the programs, and you can go and talk to other people who are experiencing similar things to yourself. That's the way I got through my mental health problem, and here I am talking to you guys, wanting to help as much as I can.
Thank you. I wanted you to introduce yourself, Rachel, because you're wonderful. We absolutely love knowing you. But just so you know that these are the partners who are out there. So services may be hard to reach, but some of them are making real opportunities, real efforts to reach us. So I want us to actually make that connection and push something back. And we're going to be working with Rachel, like Grace said, because we do want to organize a space where we bring in CNWL who deliver your mental health services, who deliver your autism assessments, actually. If it's via CAMS, we are working to hold a meeting with them and us. And I think if we work together, because I think what we find is community leaders tell us, but they speak this English to us, Naomi, and we don't understand what they're saying, or they want us to fill in forms. So actually, these sessions are sort of to equip us with the language, with the confidence, and that's what Rachel is doing. So we want to work together. So if you do want to change services, but you may think, well, I'm not sure how to go about that, I may not have the qualifications, actually let us know. That's the job we can do. That's the job that Rachel can do, to just make sure your voices are really hard and strong.
People with lived experience, you are experts by experience, by the way you've been treated within the services. It can just be a number to the directors and the executives. But actually, when they hear you speak, you aren't just a number anymore. You're not just one of those people that wants to cause trouble. You are an expert in your field, whatever it is. And if it's mental health, if it's physical health, you are an expert by experience, and they have to recognise that.
Yeah, so that's really, really important, and we encourage you to get involved. We want you to sit at these tables, because if we don't, they will forever look the way they've looked for the last 40 years. So let's not do that. Last question from Tamara.
No, I think it's okay. Don't worry.
Okay, so we really must close tonight. We will share Rachel's information and anything else that comes through. If you have any questions, we're always at info@thewisdomprinciple.co.uk. If you're not on the WhatsApp group, please let us know. And always do follow us on socials, because sometimes we put things up there and we forget to send it to you on email, because some people are not email people. So yes, that will be helpful. So we're going to close tonight, and we're going to say a huge thank you to Simon from Top That. And if you need to visit any of their support, please go and see them. Just pop in, have a cuppa, try and find that guy. And if you do need any support, he is a qualified psychologist. And if you want to do any private session, please do get in touch. And if you have any more topics and questions that you're saying, talk to us, please do info@thewisdomprinciple.co.uk. So there's more food at the back. So there's four. First come, first serve. And also follow Yao is our Better Than Mamas. He is our chef, always and forever. So if you have events, please connect with him. So that has been the end of our session tonight. We've had Jenny and we've had Simon. Brilliant conversation.
They've been to speak for about 10 years.
Right. So we're going to have a part 2 online. Details will be coming out shortly. As always, follow us. Email us on info@thewisdomprinciple.co.uk. Or on our Instagram. Wait, watching this or on our website.
Oh my goodness. Just the questions from the group here today. They really want a space for parents to process the experience, ask questions, learn tools and skills, and that's what we're going to look to do on the next session, which is like to be online. So watch this space.